hope you are too. This is the Soul Not For Sale podcast, episode 548. And we're talking about culture in this one. It's Joe Rogan sitting with I think one of his most recent guests, Brian Keating. And this gentleman is a physics professor. So, they're talking about science and stuff, but then all of a sudden they touch on culture wars because they start beginning to talk about like the Barbie movie, Oppenheimer. And they're talking about culture, and they're kind of talking about it in a very dismissive way. They're touching on Ben Shapiro and people of that realm and how there's always a culture war going on. Everything's about the culture war. And they're kind of shooing it away, being very dismissive of it. And I don't think that's right to do. Not with culture. But also, something that comes up is there's a scientist, and this actually kind of goes along with it. There's a scientist, his name's Andrew Huberman. And recently, I found out that he has been attacked via his Wikipedia for something that he said. Which I'd like to just say right now to anybody in the comment section who was warning me about Wikipedia and the dangers of it. I was wrong. You were definitely right. 100%. I did not realize that things like this happened via Wikipedia. I always viewed Wikipedia as unbiased, bipartisan, just puts the information out there. That's it. But again, I was wrong. And they've decided to go after this scientist in a way that seems very small, probably doesn't affect his career at all. But again, when we go back to culture, it sways people in a certain way. They have a big responsibility, Wikipedia, and it seems like at times they could misuse this power that they have. Being the most viewed website in the United States of America, in North America, is a very big responsibility. And I didn't realize that they were misusing it. So we're going to talk about that as well in this episode. So yeah, let's get into this clip. I'm going to play Joe Rogan, and then I'm going to show you a couple of quotes from Terrence McKenna, because this touches on culture as well, and then we're going to expand from there. And then some tweets from Lex Friedman just talking about Andrew Huberman, and then go into Andrew Huberman's actual Wikipedia page just to see how it's been dealt with. But before I do all of that, of course, I have to bring you to the store, the Soul Not For Sale merch that you can find on IamCoachColin.com. Of course, we have this beautiful shirt, the Soul Not For Sale shirt, the one that started it all. But we have the certified pure blood t-shirt, one of the newer designs. This is for those of you that survived the pandemic. You stayed strong in your mind. You stayed untainted in your blood. And this is your certificate of achievement. Good job. But fair warning, in the next 6 months, you will be tested again. Quote me on that. It's starting to come up. We'll talk about that in another episode. And we have my personal favorite, the Public Enemy #1 shirt. Google Agenda 2030. Google the World Economic Forum. Google You Will Own Nothing and Be Happy. And you will understand why I've branded this man as Public Enemy #1. Again, you can find all of that on IamCoachColin.com. If you want 10% off, I got you right now. Discount code IamCoachColin. All capital letters, all one word, no spaces, and one L in the name Colin, and that gets you 10% off. And if you've already done that with us, thank you so much. You have no idea how much we appreciate it. Now let's get into this clip.
It end up on a time start where you began in the beginning. Yeah, wow. See that traveler's life time like curve.
Wild.
Gödel's interesting because he and Einstein were buddies back at the Institute for Advanced Study, like Oppenheimer. I don't know if you saw Oppenheimer. But
I haven't seen it yet.
You should see it.
I don't go to the movies. But I do go to the movies. I saw Barbie.
Yeah, did your girls drive you there?
Yeah.
My girls are not old enough to drive you there.
It's fun.
I want to say my friend Ben Shapiro, your former guest, he hated it.
I don't understand Ben. He needs to fucking have a sit down with me about this.
Chill out about that. Maybe I'll come.
Everything's a goddamn culture war.
I know. That's what I love about astronomy. No one ever freaking wakes up and says, "See that comet over there? That's a Republican. There's a Democrat astronaut." No,
it makes you're studying things that are so immense and so spectacular that it makes all this stuff seem like nonsense. This stuff that people fill their days up with complaining about fucking Barbie movie. Jesus Christ. I mean, it would be like someone who's a pacifist reviewing the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Exactly.
And saying they hit each other too much. Like, that's what it's for.
There's a joke about Einstein goes to heaven, and somebody comes up to him and says, "Oh, you're Albert Einstein, you know, you're great. I can't wait to talk to you." And Einstein says, "First, you must tell me your IQ." And he goes, the guy goes, "I have 140 IQ. Oh, we could talk about the math and string theory and this and that." And then another guy comes up, "Oh, what's your IQ?" It's 130. "Oh, we could talk about the stock market, and we can talk about all these, financial district, And then someone comes, "I have 100 IQ. We could talk about culture wars."
I think it's more of a tribal thing than anything with us. I think what's going on is just something that's like written into the human reward system. That there's a lot of social value in being part of a tribe. There's a lot of social value in being part of a committed ideology, whether it's a religion or a cult or politics. Or politics.
Well, that's what's impressive. Natural. I mean, not to be too overbearingly praiseworthy, but there's a Yiddish saying: if you stand in the middle of the road, you get hit from both sides of the street. But you seem to like defy that. And it's always interesting to me if I talk to somebody. I talk to Noam Chomsky. I personally hate his politics or whatever, but if I'm talking about linguistics and aliens and communication, I'll talk to them. But, or I talk to Ben Shapiro. People just go, "Oh, how could you possibly platform him?" Right. Ben doesn't need Brian Keating's help to platform him.
That talk is nonsense. There's only one way to find the holes in someone. I mean, how many revealing interviews have you seen where people were supposedly platformed? And in those conversations, you reveal, like, the way that they look at the world is very flawed.
Yeah.
It's very easily pick-apartable. You could just, like, go through it and say, well, this is illogical. This doesn't fit in with your whole philosophy of freedom. Like, there's so many things that are inconsistent with the way you view this one thing. Like, why do you view this one thing this way?
I think the human mind hates ambiguity, right? I mean, like, no one would say, like, you can abort a 5-year-old. Like, I mean, right. I hope so. There are people. There's a guy in print. Anyway, I don't want to get into it. Like, doesn't make sense, right? So there's clear-cut benefits to being polarized because it simplifies it, gives you a hack, an algorithm. Say, like, I can easily say, well, you should not have an abortion. So therefore, I must be in the people that say you should never have an abortion. Or like gun control. Like, should you have an AK-47? Maybe. Should you have a tank-operated weapon? Probably not. Should you have a little boy? Well, you have a little boy and Fat Man. It's not of that kind, right?
They're not that explosive.
So I think but it's because human beings hate these Schrodinger kind of ambiguities. They just hate them, and so they must cleave to the direction that they understand.
Yeah, it's a very unfortunate thing that doesn't get taught out of people. Instead of that, we teach them to subscribe to whatever ideology the teacher is promoting. And I think that's a real issue with people. We need to give people the space to figure out things for themselves and decide how they view all these different subjects, not have this predetermined group of questions and answers that that these are they're part of the ideology. You must subscribe to them wholeheartedly, wholesale.
And even by you, like, apparently, so Lex mentioned that Andrew Huberman's Wikipedia page, because you platformed RFK. I'm like, the guy's a Kennedy. Okay, first of all, he's a Democrat. Right?
Well, this is all that happened. If you don't, Andrew Huberman commented on a post that I made about Robert Kennedy Jr. He said, "I think this is great. I hope more presidential candidates do long-form podcasts." That's it. And so Wikipedia removed the research section of his page. He's got 70 published papers.
It's highly cited.
He's very well respected, and they removed that because they had decided that they were going to. I don't know what their thought process was, what their motivation was, but it appears that what they're doing is punishing him for what he said by labeling him in a very they're maligning him in multiple different ways.
I thought about saying, like, well, you know who else Joe Rogan had on? This guy named Peter Hotez.
Yeah, well, I try to have a lot of people on.
But
it's not. There's nothing wrong with having a guy who's running for president on a podcast to discuss things. Like, what are you talking about? It's nonsense.
Yeah.
And the way they did that to Huberman, when he was just saying that he hopes more presidential candidates do long-form podcasts, you can't do that. That's tyrants do shit like that. That's horrible.
If I could, indulge your, forbearance.
So that is what happened to Andrew Huberman. Pretty amazing, and not in a good way, in a very bad way. Again, I've already said it a couple of times, but I was wrong about Wikipedia, and I didn't realize that they are willing to do things like that. But let's go to the conversation of culture really quick. Terence McKenna had this phrase. If you don't know Terence McKenna, please look him up. He's incredible. But he had this phrase that he would say. It was a whole talk that he gave. And he talked about how culture is not your friend. Again, they were very dismissive of culture just now. And, this guy even likened it to somebody who, like, people with lower IQs discuss culture and culture wars. And I just don't think that's true. And I think that's a very bad road to put people down as they're all listening to this podcast. When Terence McKenna talks about culture not being your friend, there's a reason that he does that. Here, I'm going to pull this up. I got some clips here. They're not clips, but this is a quote that he has. He says, we have to create culture. Don't watch TV. Don't read magazines. Don't even listen to NPR. Create your own roadshow. Terence McKenna. You know, and then he has another one here where he actually says the phrase, culture is not your friend. Culture is for other people's convenience and the convenience of various institutions, churches, companies, tax collection schemes, what have you. It is not your friend. It insults you. It disempowers you. And this is very, very, very true. Culture can insult you. It can disempower you. Now, I haven't seen the Barbie movie, but from what I'm hearing, they're making the men out, the Ken dolls, whatever. They're making them out to be airheads, which makes sense. You know, it's Ken, it's a Barbie land. I imagine that they would be airheads, you know, because Barbie's the main character. The movie's called Barbie, you know. The girls always want Barbie dolls. Ken's just an accessory to Barbie, right? Now, when you do that in a movie, this is why Ben Shapiro, I believe, is upset about this. Because when you do that in a movie, it pushes culture a certain way. Now, I don't know about you, but all through my life, when I was watching TV as a kid, I would always see the husband and wife of a sitcom. And the wife was usually hot. She was usually beautiful. She was usually smart. She was usually always right. She was usually feared by the husband, and the husband was this bumbling mess. He would say things wrong. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know how to deal with the kids. And it was always like this. I think the last person who was like a masculine man as a sitcom husband was Al Bundy, Married with Children. If you're young, look up Married with Children. You'll love it. It's great. But that pushes culture a certain way. That pushes men to look at themselves a certain way. That pushes women to look at themselves a certain way. More importantly, that pushes women to treat men a certain way. That pushes men to treat women a certain way, or to allow themselves to be treated a certain way. Right? Because in truth, the role of a father and a husband is not a role of somebody who's a bumbling idiot. It's the role of somebody who should be a protector, a caretaker. They should have integrity. They should be faithful. They should be loyal. They should be somebody who can direct the family, who leads the family. They should be all these things. So when we talk about culture and everything's a culture war, it's not that everything's a culture war, but you need to stand up against any institution that is trying to push a certain culture on you that you know society doesn't need. Society is directly connected to culture. And in some ways, society will make culture. But in the West, a lot of times what happens is our movies and our TV shows now are influencers. Our news channels, our news outlets, they kind of push culture. There's a reason that China makes sure to show people who are engineers and scientists and intelligent, smart, athletic. There's a reason that China pushes that into the TikTok algorithm in China. And then you already know what our TikTok algorithm looks like. There's a reason for that. They know to put people who are prominent and smart into those positions of being looked at on social media, because who we see over and over again is who we aspire to be. And as we aspire to be these certain people, our whole society is pushed a certain way. So with them, if they're seeing engineers, scientists, smart people, what do you think is going to happen? For their culture, there's going to be a culture of aspiring and looking up to people who are smart. People who are smart, people who are engineers will be respected. You understand? And then if you look at somebody here, or if you ask somebody here who's very young, you ask them what they want to be, they'll say an influencer, a fitness model, you know? They say all these different things, but they don't always, it's very rare that they say doctor. It's very rare that they say engineer. It's very rare. They want to be the person that does the dances. They want to be that person. They aspire to be that. And that culture pushes society a certain way. So, you know, culture is not a low IQ thing to talk about. It's a very, very important thing to talk about. Because, like Terrence McKenna said in this clip here, it can insult you. It can disempower you. And the way things are set up now via social media, you won't even realize that it's happening. When we just get pushed image after image, video after video, clip after clip of certain things, we get pushed a certain way and don't even realize it. I mean, I've seen it heavily in the black community. They don't even realize that they're worshiping people who have no integrity, who will do anything for money. They don't even realize it. And this is not even just to black people anymore. It's to everybody. Everybody gets pushed these images of women who are deep in sexual depravity, men who have no integrity and will do anything for money. And as long as you're getting the bag, everything's all good. It's fine as long as you're getting money. As long as you're making money, it's fine. That's the culture that's being put forth to us. So, again, culture is very, very, very important. So now I go on to this whole situation with Wikipedia and Andrew Huberman, and that kind of correlates as well. They're controlling culture. They heard this scientist, very good scientist, in fact. If you haven't seen Andrew Huberman, his podcast, he's amazing. He will teach you about sleep, about your mind, how to stay better focused, how to feel energized, so many different topics. And it's not just him talking all the time. He has people who are like heads of industry on his podcast, heads of these fields of study on his podcast all the time. And he says something about RFK Jr. And then Wikipedia decides to take away the research section of his Wikipedia. And when I talk about his research section being taken away, this is about 80 plus studies that he's done. He has a company of which they do studies constantly. This man's a real scientist. He's not just a podcaster. And they've completely taken it away. They just erased a little bit of history. And yes, it's only Wikipedia, and you can still go to Andrew Huberman's page, or his website, his podcast. You can still look him up and find out about him. But again, it's the most used website in the United States. It's the most used website in North America. That's a huge feat. That's 600 million people all going to this one website, more than any other website. So in a sense, they're taking it upon themselves to erase a little bit of history, to make sure, you know what? He just said something that we don't like, so we're going to take away this research section. So when people go to look him up because of what he just said, they see less of the man that he actually is. That's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. And again, you know, kind of preaching to the choir, because the comment section is the one that put me on to the fact that Wikipedia is not really something to be trusted fully. And now I understand that. But yeah, very, very interesting. So, you know, that goes along with culture. They have control of culture to a certain extent. Whereas this man could be looked up to, because this guy, he's jacked. He's a big, muscular guy who's also a scientist. So he values health and fitness, but then also values, almost beyond anything else, intellect and study and science. And they just decided, you know what? Just because he said something about RFK Jr., didn't even say something about him, just said the conversation was great and he'd want to see more from other people. That could be Biden. That could be a bunch of Democrats he wants to see. That could be Vivek. That could be Trump. That could be anybody, just candidates in general. There's nothing wrong with what he said. And just so you know, this is what actually prompted me to do this, because I didn't know. And then I heard Joe Rogan talk about it. But this is Lex Friedman, or Fredman, maybe. It saddens me to see Andrew Huberman's Wikipedia page attacked in a politically motivated way to remove most of his scientific accomplishments and to add misleading statements like Huberman appeared on programs that frequently platform health misinformation. And just so you understand what platform that is, they're talking about Joe Rogan's podcast. They're talking about the JRE with that. This is a dishonest misrepresentation of a legit scientist and one of the best communicators of science in the world. Huberman deserves to be celebrated, not slandered. He is truly a special human being who is doing an invaluable service for the world. And I would 100% agree. 100%. I've learned so much from that person. And again, his podcast is the Andrew Huberman podcast. It's a great podcast. You can learn so much from it. So again, just wanted to say thank you to everybody who warned me about Wikipedia. I did not heed your warning, but now I will. And I'll figure out another way to pull up information, because if they're doing this with a scientist who's a legit scientist, what else are they doing this with? You know? Anyways, guys, if you have not liked the video, like the video. It's down there somewhere. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. We're making 1 to 3 videos a day. I don't know anyone else who's doing that. And other than that, I'm out.